Management Research. Hello and welcome to the Management Research podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eugene. Hello and welcome to the next episode in my podcast dedicated to strategic management. And we continue elaborating on the 5 forces framework, and actually we go a bit beyond and we talk about additional forces that could have been included or should have been included into the framework. This framework, the 5 forces framework, is associated with the market-based view. And if you want to be up to date, you have to take into account not only the 5 forces, but also some additional forces. Grant and Jordan, in their book, suggested that we need to include at least 2 additional forces, and one of them is the complements. We talked about complements in our previous episode. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the last force, but one of the most important one, that they call the government. The government means the political power that you have on the market may have impact on the future of your product, on the competitiveness of your product, on the overall stage of the competition. And actually, the interesting stuff here is that the government may have impact on all 5 forces that we discussed before. That is why it is so powerful, and that is why you need to take it into account. What happens with the government? First of all, it can increase taxes, it can introduce regulations, and by this influence the rivalry among competitors. It can make specific conditions under which the foreigners might not be so good, the products from abroad will not be so well placed on the market as the own product. We call it the protectionism. Vice versa, some firms may undergo the anti-monopoly regulations and try to reduce the power of some firms that are already present on the market. And we see it, for instance, on the US American market and European market, what happens with big organizations such as Alphabet or Google or Apple or the OpenAI or other firms. The government may have impact on your bargaining power. It has impact almost on all the drivers that we discussed in our previous episodes. It can create conditions under which your bargaining power will grow or your bargaining power will drop. The governments may have impact on the threat of substitutes. And if you think about what happens now in the green economy, in the climate neutral change, the governments try to make some sources of energy more competitive as compared to the regular sources. For instance, the governments create conditions under which the sources of energy, let's say taken from solar panels that are very inefficient as compared to nuclear energy, may become superior, and everything that comes from nuclear energy, for instance in Germany they just prohibited nuclear energy, will become all of a sudden impossible or very expensive if you want to import this energy from other countries, because in France we still use nuclear energy. So what will happen if you are in Germany want to import energy from France? Is it still legal? Or if it is legal, is it still green energy or not? So this is something where the governments can regulate it and change the nature of substitutes and increase their impact on the final product that you have. Although different sources of energy are very different in nature, if you look at the solar panels or wind energy or nuclear power, they are very different in nature. They still compete against each other, and some interventions from the side of the state may have impact on how they will impact your decision which one of the sources to use further. And that is why we need to take into account this force, and it means we need to also look what is going to happen in politics, because it may have impact on the market immediately. As you know, soon we're going to have elections in the US, so probably when you will listen to this podcast, elections will be already over. And you know the different political forces, they have different agenda, and most likely they will have impact on the businesses not only within the United States, but also outside the United States. We have to check what happens with the policy in the European Union. We have to see whether populists will come to power or not, because they have their own very specific and very specific vision of how the economy can work. And if such people come to power, most likely it will have disastrous consequences for many aspects of the economy. There is no clear suggestions how to work with it, and there is of course a kind of contradiction, because the government is usually addressed in the past analysis, and past analysis is the environmental analysis. It has a huge difference to the 5 forces analysis, because in the event of 5 forces, we look at the specific market for your specific product. And politics is analyzed as the overall environment, whether you should go to the country or not. If you decide whether you should go with your business to Vietnam or to Ukraine or to Poland, then you have to analyze the political landscape. Because they argue it holds for all the firms, and it should help you understand whether this market is still attractive for you or not. So why should we include the government to the 5 forces framework that look at specific products? Because the governmental decisions are often very clear regarding very specific products and regarding very specific markets. Different political parties, when they come to power, they have their agenda regarding some specific spheres of economy, and sometimes even the unique products, or sometimes the different types of organizations, like say very big players, or they want to support small firms, or they want to do something else. It will help you understand how will your product be positioned on the markets if the government decides to continue with the agenda that they decided to go with. That is why I recommend you to look at this force too and think of the following, that this might be one of the most powerful forces just because the governments may have impact on all the 5 forces in the 5 forces framework as suggested by Porter. I hope it was helpful, I hope it was interesting. I wish you all the best, and with this episode we're done with the 5 forces and 2 additional forces framework, and next week we continue with a new topic. What it will be, you will discover next week. Wish you all the best, and